The day after the divorce, she checked into a cheap motel with her baby, unaware the man next door was a lonely millionaire. Under the cold, flickering, fluorescent lights of the courthouse hallway, Anna stood, silent, her arms wrapped tightly around her baby. Her recently divorced husband leaned against the wall in a crisp, gray suit, his voice low and laced with contempt. "You won't last a week out there on your own with that baby. Don't come crying when the world crushes you, Anna." She didn't respond. She didn't look at him. She simply held her daughter, closer, the thin fleece blanket, barely enough against the chill in the air or the chill in his words. She walked past him, her head high, her breath unsteady. He didn't follow. He didn't have to. His voice stayed with her long after she stepped outside. Rain greeted her like a slap, cold and steady. She stood beneath a rusted awning in the nearly empty parking lot, sneakers soaked through, jeans heavy with water. The baby whimpered softly, her cries lost in the wind. No car, no home, no one to call. Her phone was dead, but even if it was charged, there was no name worth dialing. 5 years of being told who to be, what to wear, how to shrink smalls, enough to survive. He never hit her, but he didn't need to. The damage had been quieter, deeper. Now there was only silence, a baby, and the sound of rain. With the last $58 in her wallet, Anna flagged down a cab. She asked to be taken anywhere, cheap and safe. The driver dropped her off 20 minutes later in front of a rundown roadside motel just off the highway. The Red Elm Inn. The neon sign blinked inconsistently, casting a sickly glow over the cracked asphalt. Room 6A was all she could afford for 3 nights. The room smelled faintly of mildew and old cigarettes. The walls were stained and peeling. In places, the tiled floor cold and uneven. The heater groaned like it resented being used. A single dim lamp flickered on the nightstand. The blanket on the bed was thin, the sheets slightly yellowed with age. The ceiling had a brown water stain in the shape of a handprint. It was nothing close to a home, but it was 4 walls and a door that locked. Anna set the baby down carefully on the bed, then collapsed beside her. Her arms were numb, her feet ached, her mind refused to think about tomorrow. That night, as she sat motionless, in the dark, listening to her baby's soft breathing, she heard it. A soft tapping, 3 knocks from the wall behind the bed, the one she shared with the room next door. She froze, held her breath. Nothing followed, just the ticking of the wall clock and the whirring of the heater. Maybe it was a pipe. Maybe someone had dropped something. Maybe she imagined it. She pulled the blanket tighter around her daughter and lay back, down. The next night it happened again. 3 soft, deliberate knocks. Anna sat upright. This time she did not hesitate. She reached out with one hand and gently tapped the wall 3 times. She did not know why. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe it was hope. Maybe she just needed to know that someone, anyone, was listening. And on the other side of that thin, old wall, someone was. The next morning, Anna stepped outside her motel room just after sunrise, cradling a small trash bag in one hand while holding her baby against her shoulder with the other. The chill in the air bit through her thin sweater, and the pavement was still slick from the night's rain. She bent down to set the bag near the rusted trash bin just beside the door when something caught her eye. A folded piece of paper, neatly tucked under the doorframe. She froze. It was clean, dry, and had been carefully placed as if meant to be found. Anna picked it up with slow fingers, her heart already beating faster than it should. She unfolded the note and read the message written in strong, steady handwriting. "If you ever need anything, just knock 3 times. Again. Room 6B. She stared at the words for a long moment. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. She looked toward the next room, 6B. The door was closed, the curtains drawn, silent. Whoever they were, they had heard her knock. Anna read the note again and again. Then, without a word, she folded it back and slipped it into her coat pocket. She did not reply. That night, the baby began to cry. First softly, then louder. Her cheeks flushed red and her little body radiated heat. Anna touched her forehead and felt the unmistakable warmth of a fever. Panic welled in her throat. She rifled through her bag. No Tylenol, no thermometer, no formula. She had used the last of the formula the night before. There was no store nearby, no car to get there, and the motel office had closed hours ago. The baby cried harder. Anna's hands trembled. She wrapped her daughter tighter in the blanket and rocked her, whispering lullabies with a breaking voice. And then she remembered the note. Her eyes flicked to the wall. Her breath caught. She reached out slowly and knocked. 3 soft, deliberate taps on the wall. Her hand lingered there, her palm pressed flat against the faded paint. Then she pulled back and held her baby close, trying to calm the sobs in her chest as much as those in her arms. An hour passed. Then came a sound, a quiet rustle at the door. Anna opened it. On the ground sat a small bag of infant formula, sealed and unopened. Beside it, 2 single-dose packs of baby fever medicine lay neatly arranged. There was no note, no voice, no footsteps retreating into the night. Just the cold air and the steady sound of her child's breathing, softening against her chest. Anna looked down at the supplies, then back at the quiet door of room 6B. Tears filled her eyes, but for the first time in a very long time, they were not tears of fear or shame. They were the tears of someone who had finally been heard. The snow had fallen lightly the night before, covering the ground in a soft layer of white. It crunched gently beneath Anna's shoes as she stepped into the motel's back courtyard. The morning sun had finally returned, weak but golden, melting the frost along the edges of the patchy lawn. Anna held her daughter close, the baby bundled snugly in a woolen blanket, her tiny head peeking out with wide, curious eyes. She walked slowly, more for the chance to feel fresh air than to go anywhere specific. The courtyard was quiet, framed by leafless trees and old picnic tables. Then, under a bare maple tree near the corner, Anna saw someone sitting alone. A man. He was dressed in a thick gray sweater, dark jeans, and boots, dusted with snow. His dark blonde hair was slightly tousled, and he sat with one leg crossed over the other, a book open in his hands. Despite the cold, he looked peaceful, tired perhaps, but composed in a way that felt still. Anna hesitated, then nodded politely as she walked past him. He looked up and offered a faint smile. "Beautiful morning," he said, his voice deep and calm. She returned the smile, cautious but polite. "Yes, finally. My daughter was getting tired of the walls." He glanced at the baby, who blinked back at him with sleepy curiosity. He tilted his head slightly and smiled again, more warmly this time. "She has bright eyes," he said softly. "She looks like she believes the world is still good." Anna blinked, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. Not flirtation, not pity, just kindness. A comment that saw her child as a person, not a burden. Not once in the last 5 years had she heard a man speak with such softness. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly unsure what else to say. "I'm Eli," he offered, closing his book gently on his lap. "Anna," she replied. They exchanged a few more words, something about the cold, the quiet, the motel's slow dripping, plumbing, and then parted ways, naturally, like strangers who had simply shared a moment. Neither asked where the other lived, and neither realized they were staying just one thin wall apart. A few days later, as the snow began to melt and the air turned crisp, Anna carried her daughter across the courtyard again. The baby fussed and cried in her arms, upset by the cold or hunger, or just the general confusion of the world. Anna juggled the diaper bag and blanket as best she could, but in the chaos, one of the baby's tiny mittens fell to the ground. She did not notice, but Eli did. He had just stepped out from the vending machine corner with a bottle of water when he saw it. Quietly, without calling out, he crossed the space between them. Anna was still rocking the baby, whispering soothing words. Eli bent down, picked up the fallen mitten, and approached gently. "Excuse me," he said softly. Anna turned, surprised. He held out the mitten with one hand, then carefully slipped it back over the baby's tiny fist with the other. "Can't have her catching a cold," he said with a quiet smile. Anna stood still, staring at him. It was such a small gesture, simple, thoughtful, effortless, but it hit her harder than she expected. Her throat tightened, her eyes stung. "Thank you," she said, barely above a whisper. From the motel office window, the elderly manager, Mrs. Dorsey, had watched the exchange through her lace curtain. Later, as Anna passed the front desk to warm a bottle, the older woman looked up from her crossword puzzle and said gently, "Not many men notice such small things, honey. When they do, you remember." Later, that evening, after her daughter had fallen asleep with a full belly and a low fever, Anna sat on the edge of the motel bed, her arms wrapped loosely around her knees. The tiny room felt larger than usual, cavernous in its quiet. The single dim lamp hummed softly, casting a pale halo of light over the bedspread, while the heater in the corner let out tired groans as it sputtered to life and then fell silent again. The walls, thin and aging, seemed to carry the echoes of years past, of whispered conversations, broken dreams, and perhaps even a few small miracles. Her gaze drifted to the wall at her right, the one that connected her room 6A to room 6B, the same wall she had knocked on, the same one that had answered. She stared at it for a long time, her heartbeat slowing. Then, quietly, she reached for the small notepad and pen she had found, tucked inside the nightstand drawer days ago. The pages were yellowed at the edges, the ink barely flowing, but it would do. Anna stared at the blank sheet for nearly a full minute, her pen hovering. She did not know what she expected. She was not writing for answers. She was not seeking comfort. She simply needed to say something, anything. Finally, with shaky fingers, she wrote, "Thank you for the milk, for the medicine, for not asking questions." That was all she could manage. She folded the note neatly, slid into her coat, and opened her door as quietly as possible. The hallway was empty, lit only by a flickering overhead light. She crossed the short distance to room 6B and gently pushed the folded paper under the door, letting it rest where she had found the original message. Then she returned to her room and sat in the dark. Did it say too much? Did it say too little? Did it matter? She fell, asleep, holding her daughter close, with the faint hope that the knock she had answered would not be the last. The next morning, when she opened her door to retrieve a juice from the vending machine down the hall, she nearly stepped on it. Another note, folded cleanly, placed directly in the center of her welcome mat. She unfolded it slowly, her breath caught in her throat. "I once knew a baby who used to smile like that, too. His name was Caleb." Anna read it again, then again. The handwriting was familiar now, confident even when saying something vulnerable. There was something heavy in the simplicity of the sentence, something unspoken beneath the name. She glanced toward room 6B. The curtains were drawn. No sound, no movement. For a long moment she considered knocking. Instead, that night she wrote again, "My husband didn't hit me. He didn't have to. I wasn't allowed to wear summer dresses. He didn't like when I smiled too much. He counted the eggs in the fridge. I forgot who I was." She stared at the paper when she finished, torn between relief and fear. Her hands shook slightly. She almost tore it up, but instead she folded it carefully and just before midnight slid it beneath his door. The reply came the following afternoon. She found it waiting near her door, just as before. "My brother raised Caleb alone. I was always working, building a company, trying to be somebody. He asked me to visit one weekend to help him look at a new house near a lake. I told him I was too busy. They were in a car accident on the way to that house. I never saw them again." Anna read the words sitting on the steps outside her room, her daughter asleep in her arms, her little body warm and still. The ache that bloomed in Anna's chest wasn't pity. It was recognition, the pain of what-ifs, of silence, of too late. Each note that followed came easier and yet cut deeper, peeling away the layers of skin that had formed to protect wounds that had never truly healed. Eli wrote, "I used to think I needed to disappear to punish Myself? Maybe I still do. Anna replied, I used to think if I stayed small enough, I'd finally be safe. They never signed the notes. They never asked personal questions. No, what do you do or where are you from? They did not need those details. What mattered had already been said. Every morning, Anna would see Eli under the bare maple tree in the courtyard reading a book. Every afternoon, they would nod to each other, sometimes offering a few light words. He made her laugh once with a dry joke about the motel's questionable coffee. She saw him smile back, faint and genuine. They both felt something shift, but neither knew the truth. They did not know that the words that lived in folded pieces of paper beneath their doors came from the same hands that passed each other juice bottles and laundry baskets in the hallway. But even though they did not know, the wall between them was already beginning to disappear. The wind howled outside like a wounded animal rattling the window. Panes of room 6A. Snow pelted sideways against the glass, and the old heater had gone silent hours ago. The entire motel had lost power not long after dusk. No light, no heat, only the chill creeping in beneath the cracks of the door and windows. Anna wrapped her daughter in 2 layers of blankets and held her close against her chest. The baby's breathing was soft and steady, her tiny fingers curled into the fabric of Anna's sweatshirt. The darkness pressed in thickly from every side. Anna reached for the emergency candle she had found in the nightstand drawer the day she checked in. It was short and stubby, the wax uneven from years of neglect. She lit it and placed it near the base of the wall that separated her from room 6B. The flame flickered, casting long, trembling shadows against the peeling wallpaper. She sat beside it, rocking her daughter gently, eyes fixed on the candlelight, unsure why she placed it there, only that it felt right. A kind of offering, a signal, a prayer. And then it happened. From beneath the wall, just inches away from her candle's soft glow, another light appeared. A second candle. Its flame wavered and danced beside hers, separated only by drywall and paint. Anna stared. No words, no knocks, no notes. Just 2 small flames in the silence of a frozen night, leaning toward each other across a barrier, too thin to hold back warmth. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. She whispered into the quiet more to herself than anyone else. Maybe he doesn't even know he's saving. But she felt her daughter stir in her arms, then settle again. The little one's body was warm against hers, comforted maybe by the soft glow, the calm in her mother's heartbeat. Time passed slowly. The wind outside still screamed, but inside the 2 lights burned, steady. Anna sat with her back against the bed, the candle between her and the wall, and imagined the man on the other side. Was he sitting just like her, alone, watching the flame? Did he wonder if she had seen his light, too? She pressed her fingers gently to the wall, flat against the spot where the 2 candles nearly touched. No sound came, but something did. A presence, a closeness stronger than any voice, more intimate than any touch. For a moment, the motel was not just a cheap room with paper-thin walls and a leaky ceiling. For a moment, it was a home. Not because it was warm or bright or filled with furniture, but because someone else was there, someone who understood. 2 strangers separated by plaster, and time and pain sat inches apart, in the dark with only candlelight and silence between them. And in that silence, something unspoken passed through. Not rescue, not romance, just the unmistakable truth. You are not alone. The scream pierced the silence of the night like a jagged blade. Anna jolted upright in the darkness, her heart racing. Her daughter writhed in her arms, skin hot and blotchy, her breaths shallow and fast. The motel room was suffocatingly quiet, save for the baby's distressed gasps. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Sweetheart, it's okay. It's okay. Mama's here," Anna whispered, trying to keep the panic from her voice. But the child's face had turned pale, lips tinged with blue. She was burning up, yet her tiny limbs trembled with chills. Anna grabbed the thermometer. Dead. She reached for her phone. Battery gone. No car, no way to call for help. Without thinking, Anna rushed to the wall, dropped to her knees, and pounded. 3 knocks. Then again, harder, desperate, and again. Please, she thought. Please hear me. Moments later, the door to room 6B swung open. Eli appeared barefoot, his sweatshirt half-zipped, eyes wide with alarm. He took one look at the baby in her arms, then met Anna's terrified gaze. He did not ask questions. Get in, he said. They ran through the icy night, snow crunching beneath their feet. Eli's SUV was already warming. He had left it running, maybe, always prepared. He opened the passenger door and helped Anna climb in, then jumped into the driver's seat, tires screeching as they pulled out onto the empty road. Anna held her daughter close, her body trembling as she whispered to the baby, "Stay with me, stay with me." Eli's jaw was tight, eyes fixed on the road ahead, knuckles white around the wheel. Then he reached for his phone, tapped a number from memory. Tom, it's Eli. I need help now. It's a baby. No insurance. I'm bringing her in. He paused, listening. Yes. 10 minutes out. He ended the call. Anna stared at him, barely processing. Who is Tom? My doctor. Her breath caught. You have a private doctor? He didn't look at her. It's complicated. Minutes later, they skidded to a stop in front of a sleek, unfamiliar building. Quiet, pristine, with a well-lit sign that read, Private Medical Pavilion. Before Anna could say anything, the front doors opened, and 2 nurses rushed out with a stretcher. No questions, no paperwork. They took the baby from her gently, quickly. Anna followed, barefoot and frantic, into a warm, sterile hallway where medical staff moved with silent precision. Inside the pediatric room, monitors beeped. A soft blue glow cast over her daughter's face. Oxygen. 4. A calm, focused voice explained. Everything. Fever spike. Possible RSV. We've stabilized her. Anna slumped into a chair, relief flooding through her like a dam breaking. Her body shook. Outside in the corridor, Eli stood, with his hands in his pockets, his head bowed slightly. She stepped out quietly, closing the door behind her. He did not turn. Eli, she said. He looked up. Who are you? She asked. Not accusing, not afraid, just needing to understand. His expression softened. I'm just someone who once lost a child he loved. I won't let it happen again. They stood in silence. Later, after the baby had fallen into a calm, fever-free sleep, Anna found Eli sitting in the waiting area, staring blankly at the floor. She sat beside him. After a while, he began to speak. My brother's name was Sam. He was a single dad. A good one, too. He used to say the only dream he had left was to raise his son near a lake. Somewhere quiet, safe. Anna listened still. I promised I'd buy them the house. We were signing the deal that week, but I canceled, postponed. Something about a meeting with investors. He never made it to the property. Car crash, killed instantly. He swallowed hard. His son, Caleb, died 3 days later. Anna's hand slowly reached over, resting on his. Eli didn't move. I had all the money, all the success, and it meant nothing when I couldn't save them. His voice cracked. So, I sold my shares, walked away. I've been wandering, looking for someone I could help. Someone who might still have a chance. Anna gripped his hand tighter. You did save someone, she said softly. He finally looked at her. Really looked. Not as the woman next door, not as the mother in crisis, but as someone who had lost, just like he had, and somehow found her way through. Neither of them said another word. They sat in silence, side by side, their hands still joined. In the stillness of that hospital corridor, something shifted. A wound that had been bleeding quietly for years finally began to close, not with grand gestures, but with a single quiet moment and a hand that chose not to let go. A week had passed since that night at the hospital. Yet Anna could still feel its weight, like a dream that had pressed too deeply into her chest. Her daughter had recovered, smiling, and cooing again as if nothing had happened. But something had changed in Anna. in Eli and the way they looked at each other in the quiet they shared. On a crisp afternoon, Eli pulled up in his SUV and asked gently, "Would you go somewhere with me? Just a short drive." Anna hesitated, then nodded. The road curved gently through pine. Trees and fields touched with early spring. They said little during the drive, the silence comfortable, not awkward. After about 30 minutes, Eli turned onto a gravel path, tires crunching. Beneath them, ahead stood a small 2-story cabin, nestled at the edge of a peaceful lake. The house was made of old timber, the paint faded but not peeling. The porch long and welcoming, kissed by sunlight. Wind chimes swayed lazily in the breeze. The reflection of the clouds rippled across the surface of the water. Anna stepped out slowly, her daughter in her arms. The little girl squealed with joy and wriggled free to toddle through the yard, her giggles echoing across the open space. Anna stood frozen, eyes taking in the beauty, the quiet, the stillness. It's beautiful," she whispered. Eli stood a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets. "It was my brother's dream house. He never got to live here. It's been sitting empty since." Anna turned to him, brows furrowing. "Why did you bring me here?" Eli hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because I think he would have wanted this house to mean something to someone." She shook her head. "This is too much. I can't accept this. I don't want to be anyone's burden." "You're not," he said, gently but firmly. She looked away. "I'm not offering you this out of pity," Eli added. "I made a promise to Sam that I would find someone who needed what he wanted to give, a safe place, not just shelter." He reached into his coat and pulled out a weathered photograph. In it, Sam stood in front of the very same house, holding a laughing little boy on his shoulders. The siding was still broken back, then the grass wild and uncut, but Sam's face was full of hope. He wanted this place to be a home for someone who needed safety. "I promised him I'd find that someone." Anna stared at the photo, her fingers trembling. The child in the picture had eyes like Eli's. He continued, "You and your daughter, you don't need saving. You just need space to breathe again." Tears pooled in Anna's eyes, but she blinked them away. She nodded slowly. "Can I think about it?" Eli smiled. "Of course. Take all the time you need." Over the following days, Anna returned to the motel but found herself driving out to the lake again. Once, then twice, then almost daily. Eli never pressured her, but he was always there, fixing a leaky faucet, repainting a door frame, planting new flowers along the walkway. One morning, there were fresh daffodils in a glass jar on the kitchen counter. One afternoon, he was in the garden, showing her daughter how to pat soil around a young tomato plant. He stayed for dinner sometimes, quiet ones filled with shared glances and small smiles. They never kissed, never spoke of love. But it grew anyway in glances, across a kitchen table in matching cups of coffee and books read, side by side without needing to speak. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the lake in gold, Anna stood barefoot on the porch, her daughter asleep inside. Eli sat nearby, a cup of tea in hand. Anna turned to him and said, "It doesn't feel like I moved in." He looked at her, eyebrows raised gently. "It feels like I finally came home." Eli held her gaze, the corners of his mouth lifting into a quiet smile. "That's all I ever wanted," he said softly, "for someone to feel safe again." The early spring sun filtered gently through the trees that surrounded the small lakeside cottage. Golden light danced across the wooden floorboards, warm and quiet, carrying the scent of dew and earth. Birds called softly from the branches, their songs blending with the sound of the kettle starting to boil in the kitchen. Anna stood at the stove, her blonde hair loosely tied, a few strands falling into her face as she poured coffee into two mismatched mugs. The light touched her skin, softening the edges that had once been etched with exhaustion. She no longer looked like a woman, hiding from the world. She looked like someone who had survived it. On the floor, her daughter giggled, stacking wooden blocks into a wobbly tower, then knocking them over with delight. Her laughter filled the air, clean and carefree. The front door creaked open. Eli stepped inside, his boots tracking faint prints of earth and grass. He carried a bundle of wildflowers, yellow, white, and violet, freshly picked from the edge of the lake. "Morning," he said, with a smile, setting the flowers gently on the table. Anna smiled back, warm and easy. There was no awkwardness between them now. No hesitation. Only something simple, something steady. "I brought company," Eli added, glancing down. The little girl looked up and squealed with recognition. She crawled quickly toward him, grabbing his leg and giggling. Eli knelt, scooped her into his arms, and settled her on his hip, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She rested her head against his chest, content and drowsy. Behind them on the windowsill sat two small candles, thin, simple, and half melted. Anna noticed Eli glance at them. "I never blew them out," she said, quietly. "They've been burning inside me ever since that night." Eli stared at the candles for a moment, his throat tightening. He smiled gently. "I guess it's time we let them light something bigger now." Later that afternoon, they sat together on a blanket, spread over the grassy field behind the house. The lake shimmered in the distance, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead. The little girl slept in Anna's lap, her tiny hand curled against her mother's sweater. Eli reclined beside them, a book open in one hand, the other arm resting around Anna's shoulders. They did not speak much. They did not need to. There was peace in the silence, a language made of shared breath and steady hearts. After a while, Anna broke the quiet. "We didn't fall in love, did we?" Eli looked at her, his eyes gentle. "No," he said, "but we grew into it. Like a tree, slow but strong." Anna leaned her head against his shoulder, her eyes half closed. They sat like that for a long time, until the light began to fade and the shadows lengthened around them. Eli glanced toward the house, its windows glowing softly from within. "Sometimes," he said almost to himself, "all it takes is one knock on the wall, and everything begins again." Anna squeezed his hand, a tear of gratitude rolling down her cheek. She looked from the man who had healed her heart to the child who held it and knew she was finally home. Their little girl, now babbling her first words, pointed a chubby finger at Eli and smiled. Dada. It wasn't just a new beginning, it was the life they were always meant to find, built not on grand gestures, but on the quiet promise of a knock, a note, and a love that grew strong in the silence. If Anna and Eli's journey from heartbreak to healing touched your heart and reminded you that hope can be found in the most unexpected places, you're in the right place. Here at Soul Stirring Stories, we believe in the quiet power of human connection. We share emotional tales that prove that even after the deepest pain, love can find a way to grow, and even in the darkest silence, someone is always listening. For more stories that will warm your soul and restore your faith in second chances, make sure to subscribe and join our community, because you never know when one simple act of kindness is all it takes to begin again.